I want to start by reading you a passage from Living Untethered, which is Michael Singer's most recent book. How many incidences from your past would you like to truly be done with, rather than having to deal with them mentally and emotionally long after their ancient history? In fact, to achieve deep spirituality, your unfinished past cannot be inside of you. It must be gone, not suppressed, but gone. You will see over time that when those blocked patterns are gone, all that is left is the flow of spirit. What is left is the most beautiful thing that could ever exist. How do you let go of the past? It's very straightforward. The past blockages will come up on their own on a daily basis, and when they do, let them go. There is no game here. It's quite simple. Outside events cause stored patterns to come up. Good. Let them go. Things are going to happen in your life that hit your samskaras. So samskaras is a yogic term for trauma. And the remnants of trauma in your body and your energy body. So things are going to happen in your life that hit your samskaras. If samskaras are there, they are going to get hit. The world is perfect for each person's growth, but not for the reason you think. The world is a perfect fit for everyone's growth because everyone is looking at the world through their own blockages. It's the same as with the Rorschach ink blot test. It's not that the ink blot is perfectly tailored to bring up your issues. It's that you're looking at the ink blot through the veil of your issues and projecting your issues onto it. That's why the same ink blot works fine for diagnosing all patients, just as the same world works perfectly for everyone's growth. If you want to see what is really out there, you need to get rid of your inner issues. To free yourself, the moment you notice disturbance, let go. Don't wait until that initial disturbance takes over your mind. You are perfectly aware that you're beginning to get upset before you actually get upset. You feel it. You feel when something starts to bother you. If you want to grow spiritually, that's the moment when you do the work. This is the essence of spiritual growth. If you work on yourself, you're going to create a beautiful place inside to live. This is more important than your marriage or your family. It's more important than your job or your career. You're working on yourself directly instead of indirectly. If you create a beautiful inner environment, you can have a wonderful marriage, a wonderful family life, and a wonderful job. But if you have a mess inside, you'll just be trying to use these outer situations to make yourself okay. This can work for short periods of time, but you don't want to build your house on sand. The alternative is when the stuff starts to come up, the second you feel that change, relax. Don't even wait until you know what it's about. Just relax and let go. You can work with samskaras at the energetic level rather than the mental level. This is much deeper. There are blockages in there, but they don't want to be in there. They want to come up and be released. Surrender is the act of letting go instead of resisting by pushing the blockages away. You will see it's not always comfortable when these disturbances from your past come up. The events weren't comfortable when they happened. That's why you push them away. Now that they're trying to release, are you going to push them back down for another 10 years? If you're not serious about working on yourself, that's what's going to happen. So I actually read this at about midnight last night. I woke up and was actually working on something here, which I'll speak to you in a bit. And in a way, he's saying, you know, when these samskaras, these past traumas come up, that's sort of like that skeleton that rose up out of the water. And he is essentially saying, you know, you have to stop trying to avoid them. In a way, you know, we've talked about turning towards them. So he's saying, you know, face them, open to them, let them go. And the point that he's making is that if the trauma, the unprocessed trauma is here, that's the lens through which we see the world. And so every moment is an opportunity, as we spoke about yesterday, to turn towards when we begin to feel that contraction, when we begin to feel that uncomfortability inside of us. That's the call to turn towards, to make space for what is arising. And on the one hand, you could say that the more we open to the spiritual path, and the more that we spend time in stillness, and the more that we do commit to turning towards and to remaining open, in a way, this creates a passageway for more and more of those traumas to come to the surface. And so sometimes it might seem like the spiritual path, in a way, is making our life more difficult only because we're feeling more. I mean, if we really look back at our lives and look at how our relationships are with ourselves and with others, we probably would say that actually, even though the spiritual path is challenging, all in all, the general feel of it is more real, more true. It's uncomfortable, but it feels like your life, And so for me, what I wanted to mention, and one of the reasons I guess I opened up that book last night was yesterday, one of my samskaras was up really, really strong. And it's an interesting thing, because usually when trauma comes up, there's a tendency to want to hide, to want to be quiet. And yet here I had this responsibility to be in front of you and to hold space for you and for your process. And so I was kind of simultaneously holding space for what was arising over here. And particularly in the second session of the day, it was very, very strong for me. And the whole time I was guiding the meditation, it was just so strange to be kind of, something was coming through, but at the same time, there's a huge intensity happening here. But I also was at least partially aware, in the midst of the discomfort, that there must be a welcoming and safe space here. Otherwise, it wouldn't be coming to the surface. So what this samskara, with this trauma relates to for me, is around public speaking. And so I can't really get away from it in the work that I do, particularly when I'm working with groups. It doesn't come up so much with one-on-one situations. And so it's kind of, I've chosen, I don't know if I've chosen an interesting profession. I think it's chosen me. And part of the work through the years is really this fear of speaking in public and not saying the right thing, or freezing, or not sounding intelligent, sounding stupid, all of that. But it came up huge yesterday, as well as memories from my childhood of times, probably one where I was quite young, probably 5 or 6 years old, and we're sitting around the dining room table. I had quite a big family, 5 siblings, and my mother was a teacher, and so she was at the head of the table, and she started this discussion, and she decided that she would, she went around the table and asked each one of us what we thought, and I could see it coming around to me, and I was getting more and more uptight, and I was one of the youngest, or the second youngest, and I don't know, I just completely froze, and felt very petrified. And so that memory came up, and I realized that even though I've worked with it in the past, and it definitely is much better, it's pretty, I think it's pretty from what I can tell, when these samskaras, when these past traumas get integrated, usually it's not done in one fell swoop. It's like, you integrate a little bit of it, and then things seem to settle, and then more comes up. And so there it was yesterday. And yeah, and then it just continued into the evening, and I went to bed quite early. I had my grandkids here again because I forgot to write this in my calendar, and I had agreed to have them overnight while my son and his wife went to a wedding. So it definitely wasn't still here last night. They are never stop moving and never stop talking, essentially, but they do go to bed early, which is good. So I went to bed with them, and that's why I woke up at midnight, and I was still really, really feeling this energy moving through. And that's why I turned to pick up this book, and I just happened to open it on this page. And, what I've just read by Michael Singer, I've heard similar things come out of my mouth, and I have said them from a place of true, or what felt like real true understanding and insight and experience, like lived experience. And yet yesterday, because of the intensity of what was coming through, I don't think I could have spoken those words from a place that felt sincere. And what really struck me is that picking up the book, which is, just, a bunch of paper, of course, and words, but the energy of the teachings are in the book. So that's one thing. Just having a book nearby with these profound spiritual teachings that are not just profound, but also lived by the person who is expressing it, and also, opening it up on a page. That was exactly what I needed to read, and it helped me to relax enough, a little bit more into my process, and to really make space for that little one who was just frozen with fear about doing the wrong thing. And I also could see my mother more clearly, and I could see how innocent this little family discussion was, and that it was coming from a place of love and really wanting to connect through the sharing of ideas, which is her way. But what was interesting also, so I guess the point there is that sometimes we need someone else who is in maybe a clearer place to remind us of that clear place in us. And that's really what a soul coach does, whether in a subtle way or in a formal way, holding that space of stillness and openness for someone who's not able to access it in themselves. Whether, again, that be in a very subtle way without even saying anything, or in a more formal way where we are exchanging with them. And it just reminded me that all of the trauma that happened for us, to a great extent, has happened in relationship, right? It has happened in the context of unconscious relationships, where parents or teachers or other people are somehow imposing on us their own distorted view of reality and of themselves, of us, and really impacting our young energy bodies that really often didn't have the capacity to integrate these intense feelings. And so the trauma happens in relationship. And it was very clear as I read this book, even though I'm not in relationship with Michael Singer, but when he puts out a book like that, the heart that goes into it, to me, indicates he's in relationship with the world. He's in relationship with the truth. He's in relationship with the way to peace and to beauty. And I could feel that. And that was a really important piece for me. The other thing that happened is that when I woke up, and I was reading a little bit, I could hear one of my grandchildren kind of stirring, and it felt like there was something disturbing happening in their dreams or in their sleep. I could hear it in their voice. I could feel it in the energy. And so I got up and I went downstairs and I just sat by his bed and put my hand on his back. And I was just really presencing. I mean, he wasn't awake, but I was just really presencing the sounds he was making, as well as maybe the feel of fear coming off his body. And that was also a beautiful thing because he's probably just a little bit younger than I might have been in that incident that was traumatic for me. And in a way, as I was presencing him, I was presencing myself. And there was something just very soothing about that. So that, and this, I also noticed this in soul coaching as well, is that when I presence someone else, there's a simultaneous presencing that's happening here that feels very soothing and uplifting and that brings me to usually a greater state of clarity than before I started a session with someone.